Well, hello everyone, and happy hump day to you. Welcome to Wednesday's edition of Take 5. You know what we're doing? We're breaking down the message that I preached Sunday. It's actually a series of messages that we've entitled Victory Over the Sin Nature. Now, we know without a doubt, looking at the scriptures, that these desires come from within us. I realize we live in a fallen world. I realize that we're surrounded by sin. But the Bible's very clear that the evil that is within us is what defiles us. James said that we are tempted when we're drawn away by our own lusts and our own desires. So this thing starts within us, and that's the thing that we've got to get control over. And that's the thing that we need to know, that Jesus gave us power to overcome. Now, we read from Galatians 5:17 yesterday that paints a pretty gruesome picture about this conflict we are in. It says the sin nature wants to do evil, which is just the opposite of what the Spirit wants. And the Spirit gives us desires that are the opposite of the sinful nature. Man, you just got a messed up thing going on, don't we? These two forces are constantly fighting each other, so you're not free to carry out your good intentions without a struggle. And so this is what we need to understand. This is what I wish this is something that every person, as soon as they're saved, they could get some kind of teaching on to realize they've got to deal with that sin nature. And the only way to do it is to appropriate the work of Jesus Christ. Paul tells us in Romans chapter 6 that we do not have to be slaves to sin any longer. We don't have to be saved and bound. We can be saved and free. That was God's plan for us from the very beginning, and He made it possible through His death and through His resurrection. Now, from that verse, Galatians 5:17, we can see without a doubt that we're going to have this constant struggle, and we're going to have a constant distraction by our flesh. And our greatest struggle will never be with somebody else. It's always going to be within ourselves. I mean, think about it. Just be honest, really. I mean, come on, let's just face facts, all right? Have you ever been minding your own business, and then all of a sudden your flesh begins to desire something that you didn't need, or, you shouldn't partake of? Have you ever been in the middle of prayer and all of a sudden your mind just, boom, it just drifts off to something else? Have you ever been in one of those, great, amazing worship services, and you just find yourself distracted thinking about everything else except having worship on your mind? Or have you ever caught yourself sitting in church, looking at the preacher, nodding, even taking notes and smiling, and the whole time you're trying to figure out what you're going to do that afternoon? Have you ever had the desire to do what's right, but you find yourself doing what's wrong? And if you have, and you understand exactly what I'm talking about, and if you are saved, you have faced all of these issues that I just mentioned and even more from time to time. And it's because you're in the middle of a war and the battle is taking place in your mind. Your flesh, that sin nature, wants one thing, and your born again spirit wants another. The desires of the flesh are a constant distraction and conflict in the life of every believer. I do not care who you are or how long you have been saved. That sin nature is there within you, and you've got to deal with it, and deal with it the right way, or that thing will deal with you. The battle between the flesh and the spirit is always present. And in Romans chapter 7, Paul, I believe, gives us a perfect picture of this war between the flesh and the spirit. I believe Romans 7 is one of the most important chapters in the Bible concerning the Christian's walk of victory. Yet most really don't pay a whole lot of attention to its content. Some people say they don't understand it, and so they avoid it and they skip it and they ignore it and they move on to something else. But it is absolutely something that we need to grasp. I pray that the Lord will give us some insight and open up our mind to understand this text because of the extreme importance that it plays in the life of every believer. What you'll find in Romans chapter 7 is the picture of a true believer in Jesus Christ and his genuine struggle of faith with the sin nature. Now, this is not somebody who abuses the grace of God by trafficking in sin constantly, because Christ paid your penalty and you're abusing the grace of God. The Bible said those people would come along, and in the book of Jude, he said, and they would turn the grace of God into a license for immorality. And that's not what we're talking about. What Romans chapter 7 is, it is the picture of a true believer in that genuine struggle with his flesh and that sin nature. And this is the picture that we need to see. The great thing about it is it pertains to the life of Paul. Now, some say that this text has to do with Paul's life before he got saved, but I just don't believe that's true. I believe that as you look at the text, you'll see it's not the case. In fact, I believe what makes this passage so important is that it teaches us that Paul, as great as he was, writing 2/3 of the New Testament, had some of the same problems and the same issues that every one of us deal with. You know, Paul must have surely thought that after he was saved and baptized with the Holy Spirit, that he could live a victorious life. He probably thought that he would not have some of those issues that he had, but to his dismay, he found that he still had to deal with his old sin nature. That old man that he used to be, he still had to deal with it even after he was born again. I'll read just one or two verses from this chapter, and we'll leave it there, and we'll pick up talking about it tomorrow. Listen to this dilemma Paul finds himself in. Verse 15 of chapter 7, he says, "For what I am doing, I do not understand." You ever been there? I have. As a believer, we just need to be honest and admit it. "For what I'm doing, I do not understand." Now watch this. "For what I will to do, that I do not practice, but what I hate, that I do." Man, did you hear that? What I will to do, my true desire, what I really desire to do, I don't do. I don't do it. But I find myself absolutely doing what I hate. Now, what he's talking about is as a born again man now, Paul is saying, I want to do the will of God. I want to do what's right. It is my desire. It is my will to do these things that are pleasing to God. He said, but the frustrating thing is I find myself doing the things that I hate. He hates that person that he was. He hates the things that he is tempted to do. He hates the sin that he entertains. He hates that. And he says, I don't do what I will to do. He said, I find myself doing the very thing that I hate. Every believer is in that dilemma, and it will continue until we get our glorified body. But the good news about it is there's victory over that when once we understand that this is common to all believers everywhere, but there is a common victory that Jesus made possible for you and me when he rose from the grave. Hey, I've got to get out of here. It's been good being with you today. I look forward to being with you tomorrow. We're going to take this a little further into Romans chapter 7, and I believe we're going to get some really good insight in this thing as we dig into it the rest of the week. Hey, have a great day today. I look forward to being with you tomorrow. Hey, trust the Lord, my friend. He will never fail you.